let's fire up the drop-o-meter now. It's similar thing. 1, you're not dropping this player anywhere. 10, you could drop this player in any league, anywhere. First up is George Springer, who had a big game here on Tuesday, but he has been awful overall this season. Went 3 for 5 with his 6th home run. Previous 17 games before this, 103 batting average, 28% strikeout rate, a 325 OPS. He is still 88% rostered, Chris. Where is George Springer on the drop-o-meter?
I was genuinely surprised that George Springer is still 88% rostered because
Same.
He's not really an impact bat anymore. The quality of contact has been significantly worse than last season, although not as bad as the overall numbers would make you think. That being said, if you haven't dropped him by now, we're coming off a good game. I would probably still try to hang on to him. You haven't needed the roster spot yet, right? So I would hang on to him because, the underlying numbers, 312 expected WOBA overall. It's a far cry from the 332 mark that he had last season, but it's still playable. Especially if he is going to continue to run a little bit. The pace is a little off from last year, but that might just be fewer opportunities more than anything. So I would say probably a 2 on the drop-o-meter at this point.
What is the percentage of leagues on CBS that are 3 outfielder leagues versus 5?
I would think it's probably close to half.
So then I am putting Springer at a 5 on the drop-o-meter. I think you can drop him in 3 outfielder leagues.
I think that's probably okay. Although the plate discipline is still pretty good for him, so it's not like he should be significantly worse in points leagues. And I think a hot week or 2 could get George Springer right back to the top of the lineup as well.
Some names that could be out there in shallower leagues that I would drop Springer for: Alec Burleson, who we've talked a lot about recently. In a categories league, Brenton Doyle. Like if you play in a 3 outfielder head-to-head categories league, Brenton Doyle, I know he's like kind of runs hot and cold, but the steals have been awesome this year. Obviously, you play him whenever he's at home. He's 77% rostered. I'm good with that. This one maybe a little bit more controversial, but hit another home run on Tuesday. Jesse Winker. It's very similar to Jerkson Profar, Chris. Like, I don't expect Jesse Winker to keep doing this all season, but he's been doing it, and he's been much more productive than George Springer. So in a 3 outfielder league, if Springer's just a hole in your lineup, I think I'd be all right with that.
Yeah, I get that, but on the other hand, if I'm making that move in a 3 outfielder league, I want, given that the replacement level is so high, I want a bigger swing. Like, does that make sense? Like, I feel like you could just sit George Springer if you just, for whatever reason, there's just no good outfielders in your league, and those guys are on waivers, and you need someone to start. Maybe I could see that, making the Winker for Springer move, but I think I still expect Springer to be better the rest of the way.
Let's talk about Ryan Jeffers. We did mention him last week as part of our ranking segment, and he hit a home run on Tuesday, his 13th home run. His previous 28 games before this one, he was hitting 161 with 2 homers and a 513 OPS. Jeffers has only started 11 of the past 20 games. He's still 80% rostered. Chris, where is he on the drop-o-meter 1 to 10?
That's the playing time is where it's really concerning because, slumps happen. But is the slump happening because he was overused early in the season and it's kind of a Sean Murphy 2023 situation where he's just run out of gas and they leaned on him too much? That makes it harder to trust. Or is it just they're sitting him because he hasn't been hot? If he gets hot again, they'll start playing him more. I could see either one. 80% is probably a little too high. That means that he's rostered in almost all 1 catcher leagues, and he probably doesn't need to be if he's not a standout in playing time. So I think Jeffers can be closer to a 6 or 7 on the drop-o-meter.
Would you drop him for Patrick Bailey, who we were hyping up earlier?
I think that's okay. Yeah, Bailey's got really, really good quality of contact numbers. He's cut his strikeout rate significantly. He's an elite defensive player. So, yeah, I think Patrick Bailey might just have the playing time edge on Ryan Jeffers.
It's close. I think I lowered Jeffers to 12 or 13. I mentioned where I moved Bailey up to, so I don't think I would do it. I get that the playing time has gone down. I think Jeffers could heat back up. He still has an 805 for the season. He has 13 home runs, so I think I'm closer to like a 1 or a 2 on the drop meter. I don't think I drop him in a one catcher league, but I get it if you wanted to just go with the hot hand. Again, it's like the replacement value in a one catcher league. You can kind of shuffle through those guys. So I do get that aspect of it. And the last name, I'm pretty sure this one's going to rank very highly. Brayan Bello, who got rocked by the Blue Jays, 7 earned runs over 2 1/3. He has a 5.55 ERA and a 1.47 WHIP.
Yeah, I mean, I had a little rant the last time we talked about Brayan Bello where I wondered why he's as rostered as he is before this really, really bad start. And I think we're probably going to see a correction there. Look, I don't think he's hopeless. I think Brayan Bello can still be a good pitcher, but we haven't seen anything at the major league level to justify the amount of faith that fantasy players have been showing in him, right? Like you talk about a guy with a 5.55 ERA, even before this, it was like 5.80 something, whose career best is a 3.80 ERA, was like a 4.40 last year, I think. Those types of players, even when they're young, don't tend to remain 75% rostered. So, yeah, I think it's totally fine to drop Brayan Bello. He's an 8 or a 9 on the drop meter.
The recipe for him to figure it out is Framber Valdez. Valdez, I know he's a lefty and Brayan Bello's a righty, but just in terms of gets lots of ground balls, doesn't miss a ton of bats, questionable control, but Framber Valdez has found a way to make it work. And he does enough to be efficient and give a ton of innings. Like that is the mold that Brayan Bello needs to kind of make it work. And yeah, I think he's pretty high on the drop-o-meter. I know, we kind of recommended him as a 2-star pitcher this week, and I feel bad about that. But
yeah,
this stuff happens.
And the thing I think about with the Framber comp and where I think Brayan Bello comes up short is probably in the command side of things, because Bello's someone who works the edges of the strike zone really well, keeps the ball down. Even when you make contact, you're going to make weak contact. And that's not necessarily something that Brayan Bello has figured out how to do. I still like the stuff. There are still going to be starts where Brayan Bello is really good. I just think he's much more of a streamer than a must roster pitcher.